The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her sister's life, but before the music could begin, everything fell apart. A terrible accident left the groom blind only a few days before the ceremony, and the powerful family that had arranged the marriage cared more about their reputation than anyone's feelings. The bride refused to marry a blind man. She walked away without looking back. Then every eye in the room turned toward the younger sister, Emily. She was quiet, gentle, and always treated as if her dreams mattered less than everyone else's. Her father did not ask what she wanted. He simply told her that the family's honor depended on her. Her stepmother reminded her how much money had been spent on the wedding. Her older sister called her weak, plain, and lucky that anyone would marry her at all. Emily stood there with tears filling her eyes, but no one noticed. They had already decided her future without her voice. She looked once at the blind man sitting silently beside the hospital window. His face carried no anger, only deep exhaustion. He had lost his sight, his fiancée, and almost every reason to believe in people. In that quiet moment, Emily realized they were both victims of the same cruel world. She whispered one word, yes. No one thanked her. No one hugged her. The guests smiled with relief, believing the family disaster had been solved. They never stopped to wonder what it had cost her. The wedding took place inside a hospital chapel. There were no joyful songs, only soft prayers and heavy silence. The groom, Daniel, could not see the woman placing the ring on his finger. Emily tried to smile, even though her heart was breaking. She promised herself that if fate had chosen this path, she would walk it with dignity instead of hatred. After the ceremony they moved into Daniel's quiet home. It was large, beautiful, and strangely empty. Every room echoed with loneliness. Daniel spoke politely but kept his distance. He believed Emily had only married him out of pity or because someone had forced her. He never asked about her feelings because he no longer trusted promises. Emily accepted his silence without complaint. Every morning she prepared breakfast before he woke up. She organized his medicines, guided him through unfamiliar spaces, and quietly learned every detail of his daily routine. She never expected praise. She simply wanted him to feel safe again. Weeks turned into months. Daniel slowly noticed that the house had changed. Fresh flowers appeared near the windows. Warm meals waited every evening. His clothes were always ready. His books were arranged exactly where he could find them. The air no longer felt cold. He could not see any of it, but he could feel kindness surrounding him like gentle sunlight. One afternoon he accidentally dropped a glass in the kitchen. Before he could bend down, Emily carefully moved the broken pieces away so he would not cut himself. Her own hand was injured instead. She quietly wrapped the wound without telling him how much it hurt. Later that evening Daniel touched the bandage on her hand by accident. He froze. Emily quickly pulled her hand away and smiled as if nothing had happened. For the first time since his accident, Daniel felt guilty. He realized someone had been carrying his pain without asking for anything in return. Still, the people around them refused to let Emily find peace. Her sister often visited only to remind everyone that Emily was living a life that was never meant to be hers. Their father continued to control every family decision, treating Emily like a servant instead of a daughter. Wealthy relatives whispered behind her back, saying she would leave Daniel as soon as she found someone richer. Emily heard every cruel word, but she answered none of them. She believed that arguing with proud people only fed their pride. Instead, she chose patience. Daniel began listening more carefully whenever Emily entered the room. He recognized her footsteps before anyone else's. He noticed how her voice always stayed calm, even after receiving hurtful phone calls from her family. Late at night he sometimes heard quiet crying coming from the garden. He never interrupted because he respected the privacy she never asked for. But every tear she tried to hide slowly broke the walls around his own heart. One rainy afternoon Daniel asked her a simple question. If you could choose again, would you still marry me? Emily became silent. The answer could have changed everything. She looked through the window at the falling rain and spoke softly. I did not choose the circumstances, but I choose how I live inside them. I promised to stand beside you, and I will keep that promise. Daniel lowered his head. No one had spoken to him with such honesty since the day he lost his sight. For the first time, hope quietly entered his heart, though neither of them knew that the greatest test of their lives was still waiting just beyond the door. Hope stayed with Daniel after that conversation, but life did not suddenly become easier. Some wounds healed slowly, and some people refused to let others find happiness. Emily continued living quietly, asking for nothing except peace. Every morning she encouraged Daniel to believe that one more day could always be better than the last. She read books to him for hours, described the colors of the sunset, and told him how the birds gathered outside the windows before evening. Daniel could not see those beautiful moments, but through her voice he slowly learned to imagine them again. Little by little, the darkness inside his heart became less frightening. Then one afternoon his doctor called with unexpected news. A new treatment had become available. The chances of success were not certain, but there was hope. Daniel hesitated. He was afraid of losing that hope again. Emily gently held his hand and told him that fear should never be allowed to make the final decision. If there was even a small chance, it was worth taking. Daniel agreed. Weeks later, he was taken into surgery. Emily sat alone outside the operating room for long hours. She prayed silently, not for herself, but for the man who had already suffered more than enough. She never noticed that nobody from her own family came to support her. They were too busy protecting their reputation and enjoying their comfortable lives. When the surgery finally ended, the doctor smiled. The operation had gone well, but recovery would take time. Emily thanked every nurse she met, her eyes filled with grateful tears. During the following weeks she cared for Daniel more carefully than ever. She reminded him to be patient and never complained about her own exhaustion. One bright morning, the doctor slowly removed Daniel's bandages. At first everything was blurry. Shapes floated like shadows. Then the room became clearer. The first face he ever saw again was Emily's. She stood quietly beside him, wearing the same gentle smile she had carried through every difficult day. Her eyes looked tired from countless sleepless nights, yet they were full of warmth. Daniel stared at her without speaking. He had imagined many different faces during the months of darkness, but none had ever been this kind. He whispered, "You're the one who stayed." Emily lowered her eyes and smiled softly. "I promised I would." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He finally understood that true beauty had never been about appearance. It had been hidden inside every sacrifice she had made without asking for recognition. News of Daniel's recovery spread quickly. The same relatives who had ignored him suddenly wanted to celebrate. Emily's father proudly told everyone that the family had always stood together. Her older sister even tried to return, pretending she had simply made a difficult decision long ago. Daniel listened quietly while everyone spoke. Then, for the first time, he stood up and faced them with confidence. He thanked them for coming, but his voice became firm. "When I lost my sight, most of you stopped seeing me as a human being. You only saw a problem." Emily was the only person who never turned away. She never stayed because of money, fear, or obligation. She stayed because her heart is stronger than all of yours combined. The room became completely silent. Nobody could answer him. Emily's father lowered his head in shame. Her sister realized that every selfish choice she had made had finally caught up with her. The respect she once demanded had disappeared. Daniel reached for Emily's hand, not because he needed guidance anymore, but because he wanted the whole world to know she was his greatest blessing. In the months that followed, Daniel recovered fully. He returned to managing his company, but he was no longer the same man. Instead of chasing wealth alone, he created a foundation that helped people who had lost their vision rebuild their lives. Emily worked beside him, not as someone standing in his shadow, but as an equal partner whose compassion inspired every decision. Together they visited hospitals where frightened patients believed their lives were over. Daniel would always tell them the same words. Losing your sight does not mean losing your future. Sometimes the people who truly see you arrive when everything else disappears. One evening, Daniel took Emily back to the small hospital chapel where they had been married. This time there were no tears of fear, no heavy silence, and no pressure from anyone. He placed a new ring on her finger and looked into her eyes with gratitude. "The first time we married, I couldn't see your face. Today I can, and if I had 1,000 lives to live, I would still choose you every single time." Emily smiled through tears, but these tears were different. They carried no pain, only peace. She had entered that marriage as a forgotten daughter, forced to sacrifice her own future for other people's pride. She left that journey as a beloved wife, respected woman, and the person who had changed a broken man's life simply by refusing to stop believing in kindness. In the end, justice did not arrive through revenge or punishment. It arrived quietly, through truth, patience, and love that never asked for applause. Those who had measured people by appearance, status, and power were left with empty hearts. The woman they had once called weak became the strongest person in the room. And the blind man who finally opened his eyes discovered that the greatest miracle was never seeing the world again. It was seeing the heart of the woman who had loved him all along.